We had no money, and so instead of taking the kids to Disneyland, Cesar would take the grandchildren on a ride. I mean, that's about all of the recreation and entertainment that we could afford.
It was a huge, blue, long car, like a, I don't know, but it was really, really long.
It was an Oldsmobile, and I don't know the year.
There were sunflower seeds all over it.
You probably know this, but sunflower seeds keep you awake. And we didn't have much time to sleep, so everybody always had a big package of sunflower seeds. All of the union organizers, road warriors, always had sunflower seeds all over their car.
One afternoon, a few of us were taking a car ride with him, which was, we kind of went out on a limb and really had to beg our parents because he wasn't known as the best driver.
People didn't want him to drive, first of all, by himself, and once in a while he would take off.
He would blast his favorite, Benny Goodman.
Bottom line, Benny Goodman was sort of where it was at.
Benny Goodman, Count Basie, of course, Duke Ellington, Glenn Miller.
He was a lot into the swing, and he would always play Benny Goodman. He was very much into jazz.
He was just moving and dancing, and he got so excited that the car was like in the dirt.
Really going to town on the dashboard and scatting along the way.
He said, "Come on, you guys, move." He was trying to tell us to dance, too. He's like, "Move, move, or else I'm going to pull the car over and we're all going to dance on the roof."
He wasn't Cesar Chavez, and he wasn't someone who had the stresses that he carried around on a daily basis. He was a grandfather who was driving around his grandchildren on a sunny afternoon.
Cesar was the kind of man that religion was something that was natural. It wasn't something that was separate and apart.
Cesar's fasts are the most misunderstood aspects of his legacy. People describe the fast as hunger strikes, because that's a concept that makes sense to most of us. But the fasts were very personal, spiritual endeavors for him.
His first fast, of course, he did for nonviolence, to make sure that the workers didn't turn to violence.
There was talk of resorting to violence and of abandoning sort of the nonviolent ways that the movement had always espoused. Cesar was really worried about that. He felt and knew that if they resorted to violence, that the only counter to that is more violence. He decided to fast. He decided to recommit himself and the movement to nonviolence.
So he was giving his life so that others might have a better life. He did it very effectively.
For him, that was the way in which you ultimately achieved true life. That's the way in which one overcomes, if you will, mortality.
He would sacrifice himself for the good of those that couldn't speak for themselves.
Cesar did the second fast in Arizona when they passed a bill in Arizona that made it illegal for farmers to organize. I was in New York in charge of the boycott. Cesar told us on the phone that he was fasting. Of course, it affected me very strong. I got absolutely sick. I got physically ill when I heard that he was fasting. He was on his 8th day.
Fasting was a way to demonstrate that willingness to give of himself completely to principles and values that he held deeply.
He became truly a saint by giving more and asking for nothing.
He was always working harder than you were. He was always asking substantially more of himself than he ever asked of you. And that throughout his life, he had made such, in many respects, unfathomable sacrifices.
Whenever Cesar started getting a little chunky and eating a lot of bread, we'd say, uh-oh, we got to keep an eye on this guy because it was like he's ready to pull another fast. So he did the third fast in Delano, and this one was around the pesticide issue when so many farm worker children were dying.
That summer for me was really, it was very intense. I saw my grandfather go through a lot, and I saw him become very weak and very, I don't know, like he was almost gonna die. We were going out and doing leafleting in front of a supermarket in Fresno. I had approached this elderly woman and handed her a leaflet, and she immediately recognized the UFW symbol, the Black Eagle. And she looked me in the eye and said, "I hope he dies this time." And I wanted to run after her and punch her and make her feel what she had just made me feel. I finally decided that I was gonna tell him. He looked at me and kind of smiled and said, "Mija, next time that happens to you, just look, her or whoever it may be, straight in the eye and tell them, I'm sure you're in his prayers too, and leave it at that."
Prior to the fast, he was just my grandfather, my Tata Cesar, and then after the fast, he was my hero.
His ability to speak to the depth of who we are as human beings was total. When he said, when we are really honest with ourselves, we must admit that our lives are all that truly belong to us. So it is how we use our lives that determines what kind of men we are. It is my deepest belief that only by giving our lives do we find life. I'm convinced that the truest act of courage, the strongest act of manliness, is to sacrifice ourselves for others in a totally nonviolent struggle for justice. To be a man is to suffer for others. God help us to be men.